All right. On this episode of the Garlic Marketing Show, we are going to talk about how one agency helps a B2B coaching and consulting company go from 4 leads a year to over 100 leads in a month. We've got Omi from Diaz Cooper Advertising. Omi, say hi.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here.
And we're going to talk a lot about how they decided on the HubSpot CMS, using HubSpot, getting a version done website, and actually why trying to have a 100% perfect website is hurting your business, and how they went beyond building just a prettier website. We're going to talk about the first thing that they did to get that going, the one tool that took them from 4 leads to 100 in a month, and the biggest surprise for the B2B consultants, as well as who that HubSpot is right for if you're trying to decide if it's right for you. All this on the Garlic Marketing Show. But first, this, of course, is brought to you by videocasestory.com. One of the best things that you can put into any of your content is your customer stories. Go to videocasestory.com to learn how we can help you craft and deliver those customer stories. All right, let's get started. Let's talk a little bit about your background before we get started there. How long have you been doing this kind of stuff? Because you've been in advertising a little bit of time, haven't you?
A little bit, yeah. So, advertising in general has been over 25 years, and in business as Diaz Cooper, we are in our 21st year in business.
You know, people think of marketing agencies, and there's so many of these 2, 3, 4-year-old marketing agencies. Obviously, you've all adapted and changed over time. At what point did you start getting into really heavy into digital marketing, and more specifically like the CRM HubSpot arena?
Yeah, so you could say we've been in digital since day one because we used to build websites and do email marketing, since way back then. However, we made a very conscious decision to move away from any non-digital or traditional advertising back in about 2009. So we had a few legacy clients where we were still doing, broadcasts and things like that for them, but we didn't take on any new clients that wanted things other than digital. As far as HubSpot is concerned, we became HubSpot partners in 2016. So
Wow.
that's in it as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So you got in early on with HubSpot. And why specifically did you look for this type of solution? Why did you want that for your clients?
Yeah. So I had worked in a couple of prior shops where things like creative and results were sort of like side notes almost, like the rationale behind the creative was almost retroactively fitted to to whatever was produced. And I was really interested in understanding what actually works, right? Not just whatever the creative director thinks looks good, but what's going to actually resonate with the target audience, what's going to actually produce a result. And so without having a way of A/B testing creative or being able to understand the funnel from beginning to end and not having that all tied together into a CRM, you just don't have as clear of a picture as you do with a tool like HubSpot.
And yeah, I mean, I think this is an important thing, but I want to expound upon it because I think so many people take lead generation and then maybe conversion and customer service as 3 separate things. Why does it all need to be tied together?
Yeah, it's funny that you said that because even with really large enterprise clients, I've noticed that for many of them, even within the marketing department, they're working in silos. So they have the social team and they have the e-communications team and they have the web team. And those teams for a large part of their time are working independent of each other. And so it leads to just a bunch of disconnection, right? It leads to the left hand not doing what the right hand is doing. It can lead to communication messages not being unified. But most importantly, they don't have a clear picture of what's actually working, right? That whole old adage of, I know 50% of my budget is wasted, but I just don't know what 50%. That's such a thing of the past. if you have a solid CRM, system that ties all of that together, where you're really seeing the all the different efforts and how they're working together, where you're able to communicate with your internal teams and launch things, using calendars that are shared. There's just so much that goes into it. I could talk about it for hours, but the disjointed equals bad data. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, when you have data coming in from four different streams, and you're spending all your time just figuring out what is meaningful data, that takes away time from being strategic. That takes away time from doing things that make the most impact to your bottom line.
And specifically, where do you see that breakdown? I mean, is there a specific from silo to silo, or is it company specific?
I think unfortunately larger companies that have multiple teams, I see it a lot there, where again they have different teams working on different pieces of the marketing, and in some cases sales and marketing barely speak to each other, which that for me is the worst, right? Because what's the point of marketing if it's not generating qualified leads for sales? And how do they know if those leads are qualified if they're not tying in that journey and seeing, being able to qualify those leads at, just because somebody fills out a form on your website doesn't mean some sales guy should pick up the phone and call them right away, right? Does it make sense? At what point of the journey are they in? If you don't have those systems in place, you're just not working as effectively as you could be otherwise.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I'm not sure if you see this, but we just had on an analytics company, and they were talking about people don't really take into lead generation the lifetime value, and so you could be dumping a whole bunch of money into lead generation that leads, even if they become a client, they don't become that good of a client.
Right, right. Yeah. Is it even worth it? Is your cost of acquisition so high that you're not even making margins? Yeah.
Yeah, and so you start to bring clarity, and you did this with one B2B company, and it's a B2B coaching company, a business coaching company. Tell me about the problems that they were having when they first came to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So they have a small team, and they didn't have really an internal marketing person dedicated just to marketing. So their marketing tech stack needed to work very, very hard for them. So what happened was that, they're working in MailChimp, and they're working in Pipedrive, and they're working in, they're manually doing social media, and none of these efforts are tied together. None of these efforts are, we're not seeing which of these efforts are actually producing a result. And then other things like, for example, for live appearances. So this is definitely a business that's relying on the thought leadership of the main of the CEO. And so if there was a webinar or a live appearance, there wasn't really an effective way to capture and nurture leads that might have come out of those efforts.
And so they came to you. What was the first thing that they wanted to accomplish?
Well, they first wanted to revitalize their online presence. They realized that, ever since 2020, sales tactics have changed. A lot more sales are happening online, and a lot more people are coming to research the website before they even pick up the phone to call you. And so the first thing they wanted was that revamp of their website. But we took a step back and we said, okay, great. Everybody wants a great website, but let's understand, what are your business objectives? Where are you hurting? Where are your tool sets not meeting your needs, right? And so from there, we determined that it wasn't just about a pretty website. It was that they needed an entire system to solve all these other problems. So we first put them on the HubSpot Growth Suite, right? And then with starter versions of some of the hubs, and we built their website in the HubSpot CMS. And so that right away, that allowed us to track web visits and form fills and things like that much more effectively than it being on any other platform.
So getting to that point, how long does that usually take to convert a website? Did you convert or build a whole new website for them on the HubSpot
We
CMS?
we actually built a whole new website because they needed also kind of a refresh of their brand. They had a couple of different products and people were searching them in different ways. So we wanted to make sure that their main messaging was cohesive and that their brand reflected that main messaging.
And in general, how is there a time difference between building a new website, let's say on WordPress, versus building a new website on the HubSpot CMS? Like, and how long it
As
takes you to get done?
No, as far as the process, the platforms, I would say there's no time difference in building one versus the other. But a good build, if it's a brand new build, you want to look at about between, around 3 months. If it's a fairly sizable website, of course, huge websites can take months and months. But we're very big believers in the growth-driven design methodology, which is trying to get a minimum viable product up and running, right? Something that looks and acts better than what you used to have and performs it's a primary function of, for example, lead generation, right? Get that up and running. And then once that's live, expand out to other things versus being down for 8 months waiting for the entire website to be, gorgeous and beautiful, right?
Yep. Yeah, I love that idea. It's that version done idea. Get it out and then make it better and make it better and make it better. And so you launched the website. What were the first things that you changed with that growth driven design methodology?
Yeah, the first thing we did was create a lead magnet and something that would start capturing leads on the website and that the CEO could send people to after a live event or a webinar in order for that to start working for them. So that was like the big number one thing. And of course, as I mentioned, from a branding perspective, making sure that the messaging was more cohesive, that it was easier for people to understand where to go to find the information they were looking for.
Now, a lot of people, I know, like when we've built websites with clients before in the past, they want everything perfect getting it out. How did you help them to overcome that idea that, hey, we don't need to get everything in the kitchen sink on this website right now?
Yeah. So what we do is we do a strategy process. And in that strategy process, we look at what are the highest value pages that need to absolutely be up for this, what we call the launch pad, right? And so typically that's anywhere between 10 and 20 pages that absolutely are necessary. Sometimes it's a little less if it's a smaller website. In this instance, it was about 7, I believe, right? And typically that's like your homepage, your, whatever is your lead magnet page, your services, a contact page, and about us. Those tend to be, in general, the most important ones. And so we put all the love and care into those first, get those up and running, and then start working on the rest of it. And like you said, it does take a little bit of persuading sometimes to say, like, look, it doesn't have to be 1,000,000% perfect right now. Let's let the audience tell us what they like and don't like. Let's follow best practices. Let's, of course, make it look, great and fit your brand. But maybe certain buttons will be, a different color or up higher or whatever, depending on what the data tells us. So that post-launch optimization period or what's really the growth-driven design part of it is all about letting the audience tell us what they want. What questions are they asking and not finding answers to? What is really meaningful to the user? Because a lot of times building a website is a tribute to the ego of the stakeholders, right?
So much.
Yeah. And the thing is, they have to understand that, okay, there can be some of that, but the primary intent is to make the website serve your customers and your prospects, right? Or should be anyway.
Yes. So you get the website out. Was the lead magnet that you launched the one that's been doing so well? Was that the
Yeah,
first?
that's one of the two that's been doing gangbusters. Yeah, it was like a checklist for people to kind of self-evaluate, themselves. And it's performed like better than we ever dreamt of. I mean, within about a month and a couple days, it produced over 100 leads. And mind you, this is the company that had had maybe 3 or 4 web leads in the past, year and a half.
And so, how did you go about figuring out that lead magnet?
So that again goes back to that strategy process that we start with. And so I like to say go slow so that you can go fast the right way.
Yeah.
Right. And so the strategy process is depending on the size of the client and how many personas they have. Typically, it's anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks, right? Where we're diving into the personas, their customer avatars, right? What's important? What pain points are you solving for them? What's their buyer journey typically? What's behind the motivation? What would make them want to click any button, right? And so we do that deep dive as part of the strategy, and we're basically giving back to people what their pain points are all about and what's going to solve those pain points.
Right, nice. And did you do any testing on that lead magnet before you got it out, or just go ahead and make it and let's see how it works?
Make one based on base practices because you have nothing to test against when you first start. And now we're testing one against the other.
Nice. And so you get the lead magnet out. I love that's the thing I love about data is there's always something surprising. What was the biggest surprise to you once you got the website up and running? Or something that worked or something that didn't work?
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise was maybe not as much for us, but for the client, was that people, now that we see the analytics on the page behaviors, people aren't really as enthralled with the background of the team or their experience as they are with learning more about themselves. And so the pages that have to do with like the quiz of figuring out where you're at and things like that are much more popular than any of the pages that were previously deemed to be important. Like basically their creds are not as important as people wanting to learn about themselves.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I always say with the About Us is still about them.
Even your About Us, you should talk about, yeah.
You talk about the other person and like
What is it about us that serves them?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, it's like it's the same thing as going to a party, right? And someone asks you what you do, they don't want to hear like your credentials. That's the worst
Right.
thing ever. I don't think anyone wants to hear your credentials unless even like when I work with law firms and they're like, well, I went to this law. I'm like, unless you went to like a big name law school like Harvard, maybe a couple of them, most people don't care or have an idea what it means. And so that is fantastic. And now as you're building it up, what has the CRM done? How did you optimize it to nurture these leads that you're getting?
Yeah, so that was really important, right? Because again, having limited staff means they don't have time to just be on the phone with just anybody. So the next thing that we did was create that lead scoring, right? So that way, leads are scored based on the industry type, where they're located, the size of the business, and some other really important criteria that indicate to the sales team, hey, I'm a really good hot lead, follow up with me first. Because before it would be overwhelming if they had gotten 100 leads all at once to figure out which ones are really worth going after. And of those 100 plus, there were a good like maybe almost 30 that were like super hot, like really needed to be actioned right away. And then the rest are in a lead nurture series, right? So let's see what other actions they take and let's see what else they do before it makes sense for somebody to pick up the phone.
But when you start to do that, what did your clients say about the lead scoring?
Yeah, so it's very collaborative because it's totally different for different people. This approach may not be, the exact right approach for everybody, but for this particular client, it was important for them to only follow up on those leads that, met a certain size criteria where the contacts were the right title that were, either influencers or decision makers, and that they were in the right geographic areas because they're really focused on certain geographic areas and not others.
Now, what's that conversion looking like for them on those 100 and some leads?
That's literally just happening right now. We literally just handed over those 30 that need to be actioned on. And so we should know pretty soon. But what's good about it is that when the salesperson gets them on the phone, he does have a decent close ratio. It's like 60%. So now he's got a heck of a lot more 60% to go after, right?
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Now, are you going to be layering on paid advertising with this?
We just did that as well, and so that's a great way to get targeted new eyeballs on those lead magnets and get them into that top of the funnel, so that they can grow from there.
Like B2B consulting services, is that PPC? Is that Facebook? Is it LinkedIn ads? Which ones are you finding work best?
It's a little bit of search, right? So a little bit of Google Ads, and a little bit of LinkedIn. Those are the areas where we're seeing, the best results. Again, having a limited budget, I'd love to be able to do programmatic and other things, but I like to start with low hanging fruit and then build out from there.
Yeah, and so we will put a link to your website. And what's the best way to get started with working with you, getting this going, getting into HubSpot, getting a growth-driven design website for someone's consulting service?
Sure. I guess the best way is to go to our website, which is diazcooper.com. And there's an offer there for a free consultation. And I strongly believe in that, right? Let's just talk and see what your challenges are, and absolutely no obligation.
Yes, and that's fantastic. And where's the best place to follow you, Omi?
The best place to follow me would be on LinkedIn, Omi Diaz-Cooper on LinkedIn. And I'm a lion in two ways. I'm open for LinkedIn networking, and I'm also a sales lion. That's kind of a group of us in HubSpot that have gone through the sales skills boot camps. And so I've not only done that, but I also teach one. So when you see that little lion thing there, it means both those things. So yeah, LinkedIn is the best place.
Very cool. And so I want to talk a little bit about deciding if HubSpot is the best for my business consulting service, and if so, what's the best way to start on it?
Yeah, so we're about to launch an ROI calculator that will help people determine whether the investment is worth it for them, which is fabulous. And so if you take me up on that free consultation, I'll take you through that. And that will be launching very, very soon on our website as well. It's not for everybody, and it makes sense to really take your time and evaluate what you're going to get out of it against the investment to make sure that it's the right fit for you.
And can you give us a little preview of what's on the ROI calculator?
Yeah, it's basically takes you through like what is your average sale value. So one of the things that people don't consider when doing lead gen and when investing in marketing tools is they may not consider the full lifetime value of getting a lead or getting a customer. So we make sure to look at that. How many, what are you looking to grow? How many customers do you need, or what percentage of revenue do you want to increase? And then by inputting some of those basic pieces of information, then the calculator does its magic and lets you know like what you can expect to achieve if you use a tool like HubSpot.
In general, who would you say this, like from a B2B consulting space, who would this be perfect for?
This is great for technology companies, SaaS companies. It's fabulous for healthcare companies that are B2B, right? Where they're selling devices or they're selling programs. It's great for manufacturers. It's a lot of companies and some B2C companies as well, right? If they sell something online, it's a good fit for them as well.
Nice. Well, I mean, you can figure out that for free just by going to Omi's website at diazcooper.com. We'll put a link in the show notes. She will help you find that out if you're qualified. Omi, well, thank you so much for being on the Garlic Marketing Show.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
And thank you all for taking Omi and I on your journey. This has been On Garlic and the Garlic Marketing Show.